Hi guys, it's Richard here from Sleepo Coffee, and we've got another video coming to you today. Today's topic or video of choice is how to service a commercial grinder. So in other words, take out the blades or the burrs, change them over, check everything's working correctly, put it back together and reset for our machine. We probably won't worry about the resetting, but just the actual part, how to get to that point anyway. Our grinder of choice today is a Anfim SPII. It's a great grinder. We tend to favour Anfim in compact. We do those a lot. But this one's got flat burrs. There's a few things wrong with the grinder too. It's come from one of our busy accounts that does 60 plus coffee a week. So we really want to make sure this is back on track ready for them. So we sort of pull them out, give them another Anfim while they're in the process of ours or theirs being done, and then we swap it back over. Really quite simple. Or they have a backup grinder, I think the one that this one came from. So look, let's get into the video. But before we do, can you like the video, subscribe to the channel, and that way we can keep bringing you great content. Let's get into this. Okay, so let's get started, guys. So first thing we want to do is we probably want to plug in the grinder. We want to check that the functions are all working. There could be another problem with the grinder if it's running incorrectly, making a funny sound, maybe display's not working and so forth. So we're going to plug that in. And we're just going to get it turned on just like that. Okay, so a couple of things I want to check is obviously that the display's working down here. And it's running for 9.1 seconds. That's quite a long time for the blades, so they definitely are gone. I just want to check that all of our buttons are working on the side here. I can change from number 1 to number 2. That's all fine. Just going to get a handle from somewhere else, just check it's working. Seems to be all working fine. So basically it is just a service. Now I've also noticed that this plate is worn at the back here, so you want to get yourself ready. So I'm going to replace that plate today as well. Obviously I've got my burrs, which are a good set. So always buy the best you can buy in the burrs, not your cheapest one. So there's a lot of copies on the market for all the grinders. Just go to a reputable supplier. We've got quite a few for all our brands. But then the next thing I noticed is up here, this little red thing's pointing down. I do think with this one that it was touching the edge, so we talked them through it while they're in their shop, and they just put it back on upside down. So we might flip that back around so it's actually pointing up to where the number spec is as well at the end. But that's sort of what I want to do just to start with. We're going to flick it off and unplug it. We're probably going to need things like nose pliers, either Phillips heads and screwdrivers, maybe even some small Phillips heads just to unplug the, I think there's a sensor inside there that needs unplugging. So we're just going to get into it, okay? So the first thing I'm going to do with this grinder is we're going to take the top off. Now, normally there's either a collar on the top and you can unscrew it all the way and open it up. This one, you unscrew all these 4 points here. We take them off. What we do is we always have containers to put our parts in. We have one for parts we're taking out and throwing out, and we also have one for parts that are going back into the grinder. I make sure this is shut, and that means I can lift this off. That's going to leave as little as possible coming out the grinder. Still a couple coming out, but it was the other way around. So that's why they're still in there. Not to worry. Now, what I'm going to do with that is I'm just going to take that, empty it out and clean that. Just with like a citrus cleaner or something, just to get rid of all the oil. We're going to need a vacuum around. I'm just going to vacuum out the top. Okay, so we've vacuumed all that out. So I suppose, do we start with the top or with the front? I think we start with the front, and we'll take this off. So we're just going to get our Allen keys out. We're going to have to take this front plate off first. So there's just a couple of screws on here. And this is obviously just to fix this back plate like I just showed that we're going to do first. I just think we should do that first. Then we can do a test, and then we can then, okay. Again, putting all our parts in this container. You can see it's quite dirty. So got a few dirty rags around. So I'm just going to actually just clean that over the top of this, so I don't make too much of a mess, especially while I've got the video going. But we're going to wash that properly before we put that back in. Okay, so we just cleaned that, so that's all done. So we're just going to put that over here, ready to go back in. I'm just going to give this a clean on the top. Okay, so what I'm doing here is I'm just taking out these little black plugs, which you can see in the photo there. They're pretty tiny, so don't lose them. Then we're going to use a flathead screwdriver just to take the front plate off. So just taking it easy. Now the reason why this gets so damaged is in a lot of machines you actually push a button, so the barista gets used to tapping the button to actually activate the grinder. These new ones, or the SPIIs in the Anfim, what they are they're actually magnets, and they sensitize like to the actual handle being touched on it. So you only have to just place the handle in. You don't have to actually smash it or tap it at all. Okay, so it looks like we've got a sensor in there, so we've got to be very careful that we don't ruin it. So we're going to take these two out. Don't need those for the moment. And this is the first time I've done this this part here, guys. I normally do mainly the top. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have to undo all that. Let's just get a clean up. Looks like just a small Phillips head, a tiny one. So I'm going to have to probably grab one from out of my kit. And so it's like we've got to put the sensor back on this one at the same time. So if you can see that there, just sensor pad. So let's get these off. You have to physically unplug something. To see all I'm doing is just going to swap it over. Give it a wipe. Make sure it's not dirty, and then I'm going to put the other one in. I think it was that way around from memory. No, other way around. I have to watch the video myself just to remember what I did. Okay, then we're going to put these back in. As you can see, it's not too hard to do, but while we've got it, I mean, these guys do knock the back plate quite a bit, so we want to make sure that they're looked after and it's all back to square one. And what I'd do after I finish putting these screws in is probably turn the grinder back on, just check that it's all working, and then proceed with the next part. Sometimes I'd go right to the end and finish everything and do it because I'm pretty confident. First time I've ever done this and put another plate on one of these, so you know, I'd rather know it's just working now before I even get into the next part. So when I finish, it's all done. If I've done something wrong, or you know, I detached a wire by accident or anything like that, I'd know right away, and I can fix it now before I keep going. So yeah, so that looks like that's all done. I always like cleaning up as I go, so I'm just going to give this a good clean out in here where it goes back on. I'm going to put that back up in there. Remember, we've got these two that go back in. Okay, now there's no electronics showing. We're pretty safe to plug it back in and just check that this magnet's working. So I'm just going to go like this. We're going to turn it on. Okay, so you probably noticed that the power's not coming on. It needs to probably censor the hopper on. That does happen. So if you're wondering what's going on there, I can guarantee you when I put that on, it's going to come back on. So there are a few of the tricks of the trade that actually do happen. So all I'm going to do is go like this, and it's all working. I pull it away, it stops. So 100% there. So let's take that back off. So it's good that it kills the power when you take that off anyway, just in case someone was silly enough not to have it, you know, unplugged. But okay, so that's all working. So we're all good there. And we'll give it a good tidy up towards the end anyway. At the moment, I just want to get the blades done. Okay, so first part done. That goes into another container. Of course, if you've got to charge for parts or anything like that, you've got to obviously keep them. So we're just going to put that over there. Now, this is the next bit. So now, the way it works is when we twist this, it sort of tells us on here, if we go this way, it goes fine. If we go that way, it's coarser. So of course, that's how we're going to unwind this mechanism at the top. I'm going to take this off now because I don't really need that there, and I want to turn around and put it facing up anyway. So I'm just going to take that one out, put that in my parts basket, and face it up like that. The other thing we can do now is we could probably put this back on before we even get up there, so that way it's all done. So if we get these here, and we're going to just, now I can do these overly tight. Where are we? Now the reason why I'm not going to do them overly tight, I'm just going to hand tighten them, is we're going to have to set this. Now I think the customer that we got down there has got an expo bar machine, so we're going to have to use an expo bar handle to set this, not a normal handle for when it goes in here. So our delivery guy or wholesale manager as well, Michael, he'll do that while we're actually on site. So I'm just going to sort of tighten them so we can set that as soon as we get back. Okay, so back up to the top here because we've got all this part done. The next thing is we need to unscrew this, but we can't unscrew it while this is still here on the side. This is what actually makes it go back and forward. But what I do is I just do that to see which way it's got to turn. So if it's got to turn this way to go coarser, that's how my thread's going to undo. So that's why I sort of just check that first before I take it off. So I know I'm going to go anti-clockwise with this. So all we're going to do is find out how to take this off, which is again using just a Allen key. So we're going to undo that one. There's actually two on here. Sometimes when I put all the parts as well in the little bucket, like where all the parts have got to go, I put them in separate areas. It sounds really weird, but you know, being an old man now, I've got to make sure I don't mix them all up. I just find it easier that if these are in the like back left hand side of my parts tray, then that's that bit, you know, so I put them all together. So as you can see, this bit comes on. This is just called a worm drive, so I'm just going to put that in there as well with those two screws. So now that we've got access to taking this off, we want to get this off, but first of all, I'm just going to give it a quick wipe around. Now, the only thing you have to worry about really with doing anything like grinders and that is if we try and vacuum anything out is make sure we don't vacuum a screw we've just undone or that's loose. So be very careful of that. It's happened so many times. Now, I'm just going to actually unscrew this. And look, it's coming out pretty good, which means that it's not overly, you know, tight, those like sort of thread on the grinder, which is good, but we're just going to undo it all. We're going to need a bit of space here in a second just to do the blades on. Just going to take it over here just so you can see what's going on here. So obviously I'm just turning it like that. And then when you pull it off, they should open up like that. And then what we're going to do is we're going to work on this on the bench and we're going to work with this one in here. Okay. Okay, so now you can sort of see what I'm doing down here. So all I'm going to do is get my flathead. We're just going to put it here. So now the way you can tell if these are actually gone or not is by feeling the blades, like by pushing your hand against the blades. So with the new ones, you'll find that these ones here, they've got like an edge to them. They're quite sharp. We're just going to check they're the same ones. They look the same. So we're all good. We're going to take these ones off here. So a bit of pressure down and a turn. Bit of pressure down and a turn. If they are dirty and you can't get the screwdriver in, just use this to actually clean them out before you get going, because you don't want to wreck these screws. Some blades come with the screws, so you can replace them quite easy, and some don't. Okay, I'm just going to put these on here, not in my part thing, because I'm just doing this one part and putting it aside. So sometimes I'll do that. Just put it right next to me because I'm about to put it back in, and same where they can't roll out of, as you can see with this tray right next to me. Okay, we're going to take that off. See how hard it is to get off. Sometimes they're hard. I normally get my nose pliers and just see if I can get a bit of leverage. And they normally come up like that in the parts tray. You can see this is quite dirty, so this is where we're going to get the vacuum. Now, a lot of people don't realize that if we've got any dirt on here or anything that's a lump that can actually put the blades on like a bit of an angle, that's going to make it very hard for them to come together and actually cut properly inside the machine. So make sure that's thoroughly clean. These screws and that, if you want to clean these, like, you know, before you put them back in, definitely go ahead and do so. I never screw all three up tight. I sort of just loosely put all three in first. And clean that one. You see all that dirt in there? Don't want that to go under my blades or anywhere. Like that. And last one. And we're just going to, what I do is I tighten them all up together. So see how they've got a bit of movement. So what I want to do is just sort of get them in the middle. Do one, the next one. And they'll all pull together pretty much. So okay, now I just put a little bit of pressure on there. Don't over tighten these. As grinders get hot, they'll actually tighten themselves with the heat as well. So you don't want to over tighten these grinders, but you want them tight enough to just firm tight. Okay, so that one's done. So the next thing we need to look at is basically this thread that's on here. So all we're going to do is just get like a dirty cloth and just give that a wipe, but we don't want any dirt in there. So I normally just wipe them. It depends on how dirty they are. I use a bit of alcohol sometimes to clean them, stuff like that, but this one's actually pretty good. There's a bit of dirt in there, so see that there? Just going to pull that out. I want to get that in there. We don't want that in the thread either. There as well. Normally clean it. I thoroughly clean everything when I get it back. Like if no matter what the product is, I try and get everything clean when I get it, because that way it goes back to square one. So I'm just going to clean those out as well. And then the next part of it is obviously just going to clean all this off. We don't want all that sitting there. Just put that in that container over there. Okay. So the next part is obviously lubricating this as well. I put a little bit of lubricant on the outside of here, as well as I put some on the inside of there, but not too much. And I use this stuff here, which is our lubricant that we get from one of our suppliers for the authorized home machine repair business that we do here. Okay, so just put a bit on your finger like that and just run it across the top. Just those first couple. I don't go the whole way down because it's going to obviously screw itself into all the way down, if that makes sense. And you don't want to over lubricate it. That one's all ready to go back into the machine. Okay, now the next one, this one's a little bit harder, so if you have a look over here. Okay, so as you can see, it's pretty dirty in here, so we're going to give it a quick vacuum. Now, if there is a lot of build up in here, you can actually just use your little pick to try and scrape and break everything off before you go. So see how there's some on there. In case you're worried about it, we'll break all that down. We'll give it another vacuum. There's some that are in these threads here at the bottom. I'm just going to try and get some of that off like that, just using my pick. Okay, now so to get these screws out, they're a little bit different. And the reason why I say they're different is watch what happens. When I go to turn this, the whole thing turns. So what you're going to need, and without damaging it, is basically holding onto the actual edge like that with a pair of nose pliers. And then you're going to actually get your screwdriver on the other side. To do this one now, push down firm and across. Undo it, slide that one around, grab the next one. And just, I'm being very careful I don't touch my thread on the side to damage the grinder. I only loosen them all, I'm still not taking them all out. I just want to break every thread open. And there's normally always one that plays up. But anyway, all done. Once they're going, you can just pull them out like this. Won't come out. Nose pliers, edge of the grinder, and just again just sort of pull on it so it breaks it, and then grab it. So we're gonna get it out. There we go, all done. We've got our parts bin. Like I said, that felt pretty blunt when I grabbed it. I'm going to give that a vacuum again. That's not too bad. It's not too dirty. I'm just going to give the top a clean where we're going to put the lube. On that lubricant at the top. So I'm just giving it a quick clean. I try not to use anything if I don't need to on there, except just a dirty cloth, you know, or an old cloth. Okay. And what we're going to do is we're going to just get another vacuum after that. If there's nothing on the top. Okay, you're just going to drop your burrs in the right spot. And then again, we're going to clean these as well before putting them back in, make sure they're all nice and tidy. And the time going back in. Okay, so this time I'm just going to go all the way down, make sure it's all in there properly. Okay, again, it will turn unless you get your pliers. Hold on to the opposite side, nice and firm. Spin it, next one. Nice and firm, spin it. Next one. Okay, so we're all done. Just going to lubricate the top. This top like this. We don't really want too much lube to get inside there. Okay, so we're all done. I just noticed it's quite dirty up the top here, so I'm just going to give that a wipe with a cloth before I put it back together. Because we always clean up the grinders when we have them. Sometimes. All good. Okay, so now this part here goes back on top, so we're just going to put it back. Now, if we were going this way to undo it, we're going to go this way to put it in clockwise. But I go that way just till it falls, so then I go back the other way so it catches on its what do you call it? It's thread properly. So really important that you go backwards and forwards, because if you go on a slight angle, I've had plenty of grinders come in over the years where the actual thread is being cross-threaded all the way down, and they've lost their whole grinder, especially like a little home Mazda or something. So yeah, just go backwards a little bit till it falls in place, then make sure it nice and easily goes in. It shouldn't be hard at all. It should follow its course of path, or whatever you would like to call it, its thread. Okay, we're going to go all the way down now. As we're getting closer, I'll show you what I do. Just use a screwdriver. If I can move that bottom one, it means that they're not touching. You don't want them to actually touch the blades. Again, still moving. I keep going down until eventually it will grab the two together. Of course, they actually touch each other, so you'll see what I mean. Still not touching. There we go. So I can't move that now. That means they're touching. I do a half turn away. Make sure that bottom one's moving. That means they're not touching. They're not going to actually damage each other when I first turn it back on. And now we're ready to put the whole grinder back together. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to get our worm drive part here. We're going to put it back on here and screw it down. Okay, so we're getting our worm drive. We're going to put this back on. So that's the first thing we're going to do. Okay, so that's back on that worm drive. So that's going to work when we want to make it finer or coarser. Okay, I'm going to put this back on here. Okay, screw this back on. So what we're doing is we're going to just be basically testing the grinder first, sort of roughly setting where it should go. Then what we're going to do after that is we'll pull it apart and just clean the hopper and all that to make sure it's nice and clean. Okay, we're going to quickly test it just to make sure that the blades are actually moving. Okay, everything's good. So we're going to put some coffee in. We're just using some old coffee. We only sell our coffee for a couple of weeks and we pull it off the shelf if it doesn't sell. That tastes fresh for everybody at home. Let's open that up. Okay, again. So what I'm feeling is if it's sort of sand and talcum powder, like you've probably seen in my earlier videos, it's probably a little bit coarse maybe. So what we're going to do is we're going to just adjust it ever so slightly finer. So again, right on the edge of clumping there, so I'm going backwards. So coarser. Is very, very fine. So what we're going to do is we're going to make quite a big movement to get it coarser because it's very fine. Yeah. So it's good. At least we've got a point where it's quite. The reason why I know it's too fine as well is also if the timer was running for 9 seconds before, it should theoretically go back down to maybe about 6 seconds at the right setting. So I'm just going to really open it up. See how it's now full of basket. It tells me that the setting's a lot better. So we're going to leave that there till we set it up back at the customer. But hopefully that's helped you out today. That's how you do it. And now we're just going to put this back on the middle here. So what we're going to do now is take that off and see where that's at. Because there's no point if like I move that. You saw how much I was changing that to get that grind right. So now we're just going to take that off. We're going to put this back on. Point that straight up. Okay, so when that's on, that will actually point to one of the... Yep, like that. Perfect. Okay. It's all good. It's all good. Okay, so all we have to do now is when we set it to the machine that it's going back is obviously just get our 21 grams, run our shot, make sure it runs 32 seconds for our recipe, and then we change the timer to put the right stuff in the basket. So watch our video on how to set the grinder to the machine. But that's pretty much it, guys. How to do blades and service a Anfim SPII grinder. It's all back to brand new. If you've enjoyed the video, please make sure you like it, subscribe to the channel, and that way we can bring more content. We've got a home range of videos coming soon with cold brew. I think it's stovetop. There's all different things. Plunger. There's heaps of them anyway. So make sure you like us so that way we can or subscribe to us so that way you can get that content. So thank you very much, guys. Appreciate everything. And yeah, good luck with it. Ask us questions down below if you need to, and we'll help you out.